Hello and welcome to part 4. Let's dive right back in. We're talking about cognitive dissonance. Okay, so how can you create this dissonance? How? Well, tell stories. Use good information, interesting statistics. Don't just throw a statistic out though. Use the statistic with an argument or with a story. Use this with some of the reasoning that your book talks about. Using reasoning by analogy or causal reasoning, as long as it's actually cause. You don't want the false cause logic fallacy, which your book talks about, to happen to you. But so tell a story. Use good statistics. Use visual aids, which we're going to talk about next week in here. Okay, lots of different ways for you to create this dissonance in your audience and then relieve it. Okay, so that's cognitive dissonance. Next, we have needs-based persuasion. Okay, now needs-based persuasion is going to sound a little bit like cognitive dissonance. With needs-based persuasion, you create an audience need. Okay, and then you fill it. Okay, that's it. You can either find that need and fill it, or you can create that need. It's extremely persuasive for you to stand up in front of an audience and say, hey, you have a need and you don't know it. And here it is. Now, you're not doing it in a sleazy sales sort of way. You're doing it in an ethical, remember, okay? Look, I'm here to persuade you. And there's a need that you have that you don't even realize it, okay? And so ultimately, this is based on Maslow's hierarchy of need. Now, if you've never come across Maslow, you will in higher education. It's in just about every humanities type class you're ever going to be in. Okay, it's in psych, it's in sociology, it's in communication, it's all over the place. Okay, now I've got it with the most basic on top. Okay, the physiological is technically the bottom part of the pyramid that he puts it in, but essentially Maslow's hierarchy of needs says this. If my physiological needs are not met, I am not worried about my safety. I mean, I'll be worried about it, but I'll risk it. If it's get out and hunt for food or sit around and starve, I'm probably going to go around and hunt for food, even if the thing that I'm hunting might kill me. Okay? So that's how that stuff works. I need to pause. I'm getting an important phone call. Hello, I'm back. We're potty training right now at home, and my kid just successfully pottied, and it's ridiculously encouraging. So that was the important phone call, and it was really important. So I never would have thought that I would be so happy about a human being going to the bathroom on a toilet than I am right now. I'm stoked. Anyways, let's talk about needs, okay? So I know that story will date the screencast, so I'll have to redo the screencast again in the future, but that's okay. It's worth it. So here we are talking about Maslow's hierarchy of need. What I think I was saying was that if my physiological needs are not being met, so it's not that I won't think about safety. I'll think about it, but I'll risk it. Okay. So then it's safety. Theoretically, if my basic needs are met, food, air, water, etc., then I will take care of my safety. Okay. So I will, if I can be safe, I prefer that. Okay. But I will risk it to get those things. Once I'm relatively safe, then I think about my social needs. Then I'm like, wow, you know what? Okay, I've got my basic needs met. I'm relatively safe. It'd sure be nice to not be alone in the world, right? Once my social needs are relatively met, then I'm going to start thinking about my self-esteem. Okay, so like for example, if something is holding me underwater and I am in fear of drowning, I am not in that moment going to be thinking like, you know, I'm kind of having a bad hair day today. Not really feeling myself. You know, I'm feeling a little bit fatter than I really like. In that moment, I am not thinking about those things. In that moment, I am like, air. I need air. I want air. Okay. So Maslow's hierarchy has a lot of applications. So self-esteem is I want to feel good about myself, and then self-actualization is, or of value and worthy as well. And then self-actualization is I am operating at full capacity. I've got all my needs met. I'm sort of trucking along really good. And for Maslow, self-actualization is a passing thing. Like I might get there temporarily, but something's going to knock me down, right? Like something's going to pull me back. My own selfishness, my own ego. Someone's going to be like, hey, that shirt looks good for a guy whose nose looks like yours, you know? And you're like, what? What's wrong with my nose? Or something. And so self-actualization is passing. But as a persuasive strategy, what you can do is you can kind of see, all right, if I'm doing my speech on the student loan crisis in America, okay, where's it gonna fall? You know, who's my audience and what's the need? You know, if my room is full of college students, where's that at? You know, if my room is full of student loan lenders, what's it going to be? You know, where's the need there? Okay, so you can begin to highlight some of these things, and then you tailor your message to fill that need. Okay, so really think about that as a possibility. Your next option is positive motivation. Doesn't that sound nice? Doesn't that sound good? Well, what it means is this. It means you determine what the audience values most about your message. Okay, so if I am doing my presentation on home ownership in Colorado or rent in Colorado, okay, well, who's my audience and what do they value most? Okay, so is my room full of people who bought homes in Colorado 10 or 20 years ago? Or is my room full of people who are trying to rent for the very first time moving out of their parents' house? What are they going to value most? Okay? If I've got a room full of people who are just now moving out of their parents' houses and are trying to rent in Colorado, they don't give a crap about equity. They don't give a crap about how much all of the homes have gone up in value. They care that they can't get a place to rent for less than like $1,500 a month or whatever it is. I mean, I know rent is astronomical. I don't know what a base level place costs now. It's astronomical, okay, compared to where I grew up and compared to what is going on there. But if I've got a room full of people who have been homeowners for 20 years, who are like, you know, that $80,000 house I bought 20 years ago is now worth $500,000. They're excited about this thing. They're like, what do I do with this? And how do I, you know, what do I do with it? So you tailor your message to what the audience values, okay? If you're like, I really want to talk about home prices in Colorado, who's your audience? And what do they value, okay? I really want to talk about education and reinforcing the value of education. Who's your audience and what do they value, okay? So you can ask this question of just about any topic. And what this does then is you choose your topic and what you want to talk about, but then you let the audience and their values tell you how you're going to talk about it. Does that make sense? So it's not just, I want to talk about how, you know, legalizing marijuana or the goods or the pros or the cons of it. Okay. I want to talk about the pros or cons of legalizing marijuana in Colorado. Who's your audience and what do they value? And how do you tailor your message to that audience? Okay, because if you've got a room full of people who moved here from, you know, Texas because they're like, I've really wanted to smoke weed legally, then that's going to be very different than you've got people who've been living here for a while who are like, it's making the population of the state unbearable, right? So think about who your audience is and think about what they value, okay? Now, this next one is the hardest one to talk about, okay? Because I'll go all the way back to the definition of persuasion, an ethical attempt, okay? So our last possible method here is negative motivation. It's going to sound bad, but I'm going to explain it, okay? It uses ethical fear appeals. Now, you may have heard that there's no such thing as an ethical fear appeal. That's not true. There are ethical fear appeals. Some things ought to scare us. Yeah? Some things ought to induce a fear response. Okay? An ethical fear response is one that uses fear because it's the right thing. Okay? It's the right thing. So if I'm going to talk about climate change, and I'm going to talk about how we're really in trouble if we don't do something about it, that ought to induce fear. Okay? So it subtly threatens the audience with negative consequences if they do not adopt your proposition. Okay? Again, we're going to talk about it in the discussion boards, but this is different than manipulation. This is different than coercion. Okay? You're not using fear just to stir up fear where there shouldn't be any fear. Okay? The 24-hour news cycle in the United States does this, not the ethical version. Okay? The 24-hour news cycle in the United States uses fear appeals just to get people worked up. And it happens across the political spectrum. Okay? I'm not attacking one. I have my bias in the political spectrum, of course. But the 24-hour news cycle in the United States uses fear appeals in a way that is meant to get ratings, not to report what's actually true. Okay? If you want a really good, balanced view of the news, you need to look at other sources. Okay? So this next thing sounds really bad. Okay? But let me explain. A strong threat to a loved one tends to be more successful than a fear appeal directed at the audience members themselves. Doesn't that sound like the mob? I am not arguing for mafia persuasion, okay? That's not the good stuff, all right? That's coercion, by the way. What we're talking about here is it's more effective if you can show me that this thing is going to impact my daughter than just me, all right? So talk to me about how my bad eating habits are going to impact my daughter. Make sense? It's like, hey, your bad eating habits, they're gonna be bad for you. And it's like, yeah, I know, but it's my choice and it doesn't hurt anybody else. So what's the problem? Well, actually, your choice impacts your daughter. Then I'm more likely to go, oh, okay, well maybe I need to not eat so bad. Okay? So does that make sense? And again, this strong threat is not the coercive kind. It's the threat that like genuinely your behavior impacts your loved ones. And that ought to get you. Okay? And if you don't love your loved ones, then you know what's wrong with you, right? So you can use negative motivation ethically if what you're talking about should induce a oh crap response. All right? Where you know it's like, oh wow, you know what? Maybe I ought to change my eating habits because I want to be around for my daughter as she grows up. Right? Stuff like that, okay? So think about, once you've got your topic, pick your topic first, okay? Like, I really want to talk about, you know, this one thing. Then, as you're beginning to hone, okay, am I reinforcing, modifying, or changing? Am I looking more at attitudes, beliefs, or values? Kind of where am I at here and there? How am I going to do this? Look at these, okay? And go, you know what? This topic really lends itself to positive motivation. This topic really lends itself to negative motivation. This topic really lends itself to needs. Now, is it possible that negative motivation and cognitive dissonance go together? Yes, absolutely. Is it possible that you're doing some negative motivation and positive motivation together? Sure. Is it possible that you're just using one? Sure. Okay. Sometimes these marry very well together. Sometimes they don't. It depends on the topic. It depends on the target audience. It depends on the speaker. Okay. So take all of this into consideration as you are moving yourself forward in our discussions this week. In talking about our discussion boards this week, all of this is applicable. Okay. So I look forward to what you're coming up with. We're not going to brainstorm topics this week. We brainstorm those next week. Okay. I look forward to seeing what you say in the boards, and I look forward to moving into the persuasive speeches. See you in the boards.